Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kamal Bali, the President and Managing Director of Volvo Group India. Indeed, a pleasure having him with us here. May I have his AV, please.
Mr. Kamal Bali is the President and Managing Director of Volvo Group India with nearly 4 decades of leadership in the automotive sector. An IIT engineering graduate, Mr. Bali has held senior roles in reputed Indian and multinational firms. He was knighted with Sweden's Royal Order of the Polar Star in 2019 and is a recipient of the ET Inspiring CEO 2021 award. Mr. Bali also serves on key boards across industry, academia, and public sector institutions.
Let's give him a big round of applause for taking time off and being here today. May I now invite Mr. Kamal Bali to deliver the keynote address, please.
Namaskar and good evening to each one present here, ladies and gentlemen, very distinguished delegates on the dais, Mr. Mahalingam, Dr. Sunita Reddy, Mr. Lakshmi Narayan, Mr. P.S. Ishwaran, and Group Captain Vijay Kumar. Thank you very much for inviting me this evening to this very important MMA Awards event. First of all, let me congratulate all the winners for the awards which you have won. And these awards make even more sense and more importance today because the kind of environment which we are living in, especially in the world of business and commerce, the kind of shifts which we are seeing, to be able to have excellence in this kind of a moving goalpost environment, I think it's fantastic. So big hand already to all the people who are the award winners. Let me over the next 15 to 20 minutes share with you what are the shifts what we are seeing in the world of business and commerce. What is really the advantage India and therefore how can we leverage some of these advantages which India presents, and of course also many challenges as well, through entrepreneurial excellence in leadership and managerial excellence. I think that's to me would be appropriate to talk over the next 15 to 20 minutes. Friends, as I said that the shifts are tremendous. The VUCA world, what we called, is probably at its best. I mean, I think all elements of VUCA are at its best ever yet. Maybe there could be more. Industry, whichever sector you see, is going through tremendous transformation. And this transformation is happening on account of 3 or 4 things. One is connectivity, other is digitalization, third is automation, and fourth is energy transition. So I think because of these 4 elements, many industries are getting impacted. And the beauty is that these shifts are not only sectoral, they are ecosystem-wide shifts. That's why it becomes very complex. You need to join the dots. So I think that's another very important thing. Then, of course, geopolitical uncertainties are throwing tremors all around the world. And we will come back to that in a moment. And then social media providing borderless expressions to people on ideas and suggestions and articles and news, right or wrong, all across the world. You need to manage that as well. So I think the kind of shifts which are happening, I think we have not seen in the last 1 century. So, in fact, I was just going through one podcast yesterday, and there the speaker was talking about how despite all advances in medicine, there are many diseases like cancer, type 1 diabetes, and Parkinson. We've not found solutions to those, and he was placing his bets on biological AI, saying that they will have soon a digital twin of your cells, and then therefore really looking at biological AI tools to be able to solve some of the problems and breakthroughs in some of these areas. So I think that was one very, very funny thing, which, I mean, I found it funny, but I mean, I think, but that's the reality that's happening. If I look at my own sector, imagine the IC engines which have been perfected over 120 years. Look at those engineers, people who have worked on those IC engines. How do they look at a battery electric vehicle? So the IC engine is going to go away as if, and battery electric vehicle. So how do they look at that? And look at the engineers who have perfected the art on vehicle technology, the automotive technology. And now you have guys with skills where we are talking about software-defined vehicles. So look at the kind of shift. They're paradigm shifts, completely different sectors. And this is going to happen with every sector of economy, whether it is farming, art, culture, anything. You will see the advent of technology coming in and changing the complete behavior. If I were to put some of these shifts in perspective, let me say there are 4 seismic shifts which are happening today. I think number 1, very clearly, is the return of big power conflicts. And that is what we are seeing, whether it is post-World War II, whether it is Europe, we see Russia, Ukraine. In Middle East, we have seen Israel, we have seen Iran, Hamas, and then of course there is also stress in Asia between Taiwan and China, and also in our own case. So I think there's a return of big power conflicts after the World War II. I think that's the first thing which we see. The second shift we see is clearly the crisis in economic globalization. We've been talking of globalization, and China really enjoyed that opportunity which came about 30 years ago. But I think there is a huge crisis in economic globalization today. And I think Trump's Liberation Day efforts and tariffs and non-tariff barriers are playing out in its own way. But let's see where it goes. So that's the second very major shift which we see. The third shift I've already alluded to, which is emergence of AI and other technology tools. And I think they are going to redefine the industry, and therefore there has to be a sense of urgency, and India can definitely have a second mover advantage there. The fourth shift which we see very, very clearly is the principles of holistic sustainability and energy transition in particular. When I say holistic sustainability, which means that there is a lens which everybody is going to use going forward, which means that whatever you do has to be economically viable, has to be environmentally friendly, socially inclusive, and morally ethical. So I think that's another shift which we see. So with these 4 shifts, I think we see the world with a very, very different lens and very different, I would say, skill sets needed to manage all of this. So let me dare say that in India, we are in the right place at the right time and with the right people. And I can tell you this with confidence when I move around the world, and I think the kind of energy levels which are there in our country are tremendous. And I think we need to leverage some of those. And I think if I were to look at some of the macro indicators for India, the current macro indicators, I think the number 1, the private sector investments are seeing positive uptrend in the last 6 months. And we see net assets of private sector going up. I think this is good. Headline inflation is down. It's down below even Reserve Bank's 4% number. Rural and urban households are optimistic about future consumption, which is good. Current account deficit is down. FX are strong. External debt to GDP ratios are pretty low. And I think India's services trade serves as a very, very good cushion to our challenges many times in manufacturing side and imports of crude oil and other things. So, I mean, if you were to look at India's growth story, we are going to soon be the third largest economy. We all talk about that. Of course, our per capita incomes are still very low. We need to move up there. But I think the good story is that over the next 10 to 15 years, India is going to grow at more than twice the rate of rest of the world. So I think that's the big story. To me, while the world will grow between 2.5 to 3 percentage points, India will grow between 6.5 to 7.5 percentage points, which means that India's contribution in the global growth will be 2.5 times what it is today over the next 10 to 15 years. So I think that's a very, very big shift which we see. And the interesting thing is that India's growth story is not going to be like China. China grew on the back of exports. Only 30% domestic consumption was part of their economy. In India, our domestic consumption is still going to be more than 60%. So it's going to be on the basis of workforce involvement, increase in incomes, consumption levels, and I think that's going to be a story. So our growth will be more organic, more stable, may not be very dramatic, but I think that's the way India is going to go. So let's stop comparing India with China, and I think that's something which is very, very important. We are very, very different animals, so to say. So I think these are some of the opportunities. And India cannot be defined with one brush. So if we were to analyze India, we saw India is actually in three very distinct parts, actually many parts, but for the sake of simplification, I think the first part is where we have about roughly 140 million people with a per capita income of about $15,000, which is something very, very similar to Australia. Not the number, not the population, but in terms of so I think these are more affluent. The second part is something which is similar to Indonesia, about roughly 300 million people, roughly $3,000 US per capita income, something very similar to, and the best balance is about 1 billion people, which is Bharat, which has a per capita income of under 1 lakh a year. So I think, so those are the three Indias which we have to deal with, and those are the three Indias which will need very different treatment and very different, I would say, interface, so to say, I think. So these are some of the things which we see happening very, very clearly. So given all the good things which are happening, so why is India in spotlight? I think India is in spotlight due to many, many reasons which I talked about. But I think the 3 or 4 very, very clearly thing. Number one is decisive structural reforms, which are happening when more need to happen. Investments in capex. Earlier, government used to spend just 19% of their monies into capex, 19% of their total spend. Today it is about 29%, which means this is a money well spent. This will build assets for the future, and we can derive growth out of this in the future. And then, of course, strides in energy transition. We are doing well. Then we have young, digitally savvy population. When we have diversity, we upgrade from agriculture to AI. That's the kind of spread we have. From agriculture to AI is the kind of diversity which we have in our talent and young. So therefore, democracy, demography, diversity, decarbonization, digitalization, determination, and dependability. If I were to say, these are the 7 Ds which are really driving the India story, and I think they can continue to be a very, very big story going forward. So therefore, before I end, what really is required in terms of leadership, excellence in leadership? I think a few very, very quick. What are the leadership principles which will help us to really leverage the India story and take India to the place where it deserves? I think very, very clearly establishing a higher purpose. A higher purpose is very critical because I think that is something which helps you to navigate through the fog of uncertainty. When there is uncertainty, if you have a good purpose, you will be able to move within the fog of that uncertainty. So very, very clearly, we must have a purpose, very, very clear purpose. Second, very important is trust is going to be the new currency. And I think this is important. And for trust, what you need to do, you need to be transparent. Transparency leads to trust, and trust leads to collaboration. And collaboration is going to be very, very critical for the future. And of course, I talked about the sustainability lens, the 4 elements which are going to be very, very critical. And then taking responsibility of staying optimistic. I mean, the difference between glass half full and half empty. I mean, how do we look at the glass? And I think that is one attitude. We have to be less cynical about our own story. We have to be more positive about our own story. And I think that's going to be very important. And the next one is going to be culture. And I think building a culture, because every organization has 2 steering systems, culture and structure. So something goes wrong, generally we try to fix the structure, because that's easy to fix. And then 2 years later, we find the same things happening again. So therefore, we need to really spend more time on building that culture. Culture is what? What are the habits and behaviors which are appreciated? What are the habits and behaviors which are not appreciated in the organization? I think that's something important. And then, of course, courage to shape the future. Very, very important for leaders and for managerial and leadership excellence. That's going to be very critical. And finally, to my mind, we have to be curious, lifelong learners. I think the way the world is moving, that's going to be very, very critical attribute which we will possess. And finally, if I were to say, one thing is going to be partnership. Partnership is going to be the new leadership. I think going forward, no individual, no single entity will be able to solve problems or find solutions on their own. You will have to partner. I mean, in our own company, the kind of partnerships we've gone through in the last 5 years are amazing. We have partnered even with our competitor to be able to win in this new game of technology. So I think partnership is going to be the future leadership, and therefore the arrogance of larger companies will be demolished. And I think we will need to work together with each other to be able to bring, to leverage India's story to its advantage. So therefore, I will wish all the winners good luck once again, and may you continue to excel in managerial and leadership excellence. Thank you.